Good morning. It is a miracle this morning that we don't actually have any announcements to share this week. Can't guarantee that next week, but let's just savor that for now. Welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Reverend Zachary Vinson, and I am serving as the worship associate this morning. And today I am pleased to be participating in worship alongside my friend and colleague, Reverend Sean Neal Barron. Reverend Sean is a graduate of Harvard Divinity School and currently serves as the associate minister at Foothills Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. Sean is a self-proclaimed nerd, particularly about history, current politics, science, and Star Wars. I am grateful for Sean joining us today and for his willingness to share his reflections on relational dynamics in a faith context. Welcome, Sean. I also want to take a moment to express my gratitude for all of you who worked hard to turn this elementary school gym into a sacred space this morning, especially to the members of the setup team who put up all the chairs and our podium up here, to our tech team, as well as our musicians, and all of you for being here to make what we do more meaningful. Welcome. Before we move further into this service, I would like to ask us to pause, to acknowledge that members of our congregation occupy the ancestral and traditional and contemporary lands of the Coast Salish tribes. The homelands of the Suquamish, Duwamish, Klallam, and Chimicum people were ceded under duress through the Point Elliott and Point No Point treaties. We affirm indigenous sovereignty, both past and present, and recognize that this does not mean that we can just say these words, but that we must commit ourselves to building relationships and continuing to learn about the contemporary traditions and cultures of the Coast Salish people. Now, let us take a breath and center ourselves in this space, in this moment together, as we prepare ourselves to listen to the prelude this morning, Minuet number 2, composed by Johann Sebastian Bach and performed by Grace Bono.
Here we are, each of us arriving out of our individual lives, our baggage clinging to our backs. Some of our hearts may be broken or beaming or somewhere in between. Our minds might be clear or cluttered or somewhere in between. Our bodies fatigued or rested or somewhere in between. This morning, no matter the state of your heart, no matter the realities of your mind, no matter those feelings in your body, we have made a place for you here with us, a place for all of you, all the parts of the constellation of you that brightens and fashions this garment of destiny that is our life together. So let's take a moment to deepen into delight, into the embrace of this sacred and holy community. I invite you to look around at each other and just offer a little acknowledgement of our connectedness here together, a smile, a nod, weaving this people together for this sacred hour. Come, friends, come. Let us worship together. And let's cement this opening with a little singing, shall we? So I think it is your custom generally to mask, and so I invite you to rise in body and spirit, and we're going to sing number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. All that we serve, for services we give, for work and its reward, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, for we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Ogres are like onions.
They stink?
Yes. No.
Oh, they must make you cry then.
No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun and they get all brown and start sprouting little hairs?
No. Layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it? We both have layers.
Oh, you both have layers. You know, not everyone likes onions.
This is a conversation taken out of the 2001 DreamWorks picture Shrek, titled after the ogre Shrek. The conversation takes place when Shrek and his traveling companion, reluctant to have come along, are setting out from Farquaad to someplace far away to rescue the Princess Fiona from a tower that is guarded by a fierce dragon. Shrek didn't want Donkey to join him on this quest one bit, but the persistent donkey didn't give the ogre a choice. As they journeyed and bantered together, the donkey was determined to befriend Shrek. But the ogre was so used to being a solitary swamp dweller that he was not in the market for friends. Despite this, however, over the course of the journey, Donkey's efforts eventually prevailed. He persisted and truly wanted to get to know this ogre, to peel back those layers. Perhaps you've been in a situation like this. People are like ogres. Not in a big, scary, green way like Shrek, but more in the way that ogres are like onions. Onions have layers. People have layers. I know that in my own life, this has been the case on several occasions while I have been developing relationships with people. I think the most demonstrative example of this can be found on reflecting on my relationship with one of my best friends and colleagues, Amanda Weatherspoon. Sorry, Sean, this isn't about you. Eventually, Amanda and I first met when I moved down to California to attend Star King School for the Ministry. I was in my first year, my first semester, and knew nobody. Amanda was in her second year and seemed like one of the cool kids that you wanted to befriend. However, despite my efforts, Amanda didn't seem to want new friends. I'd come to class and I'd make a point of sitting next to her and striking up conversations. Nothing. After class, I might linger, hoping to catch her in the hallway and just say hello and get some acknowledgement. Nothing. Some might consider this stalking, but I was just lonely and needed someone. Eventually, though, as the semester wore on, I found myself attending these group excursions where members of the Star King community would go into San Francisco or Oakland to do various activities. And often on these excursions, Amanda was present. And it was in this space that we started to talk to each other, to realize that we had things in common. We both have a sarcastic sense of humor and revel in things that are sometimes just goofy and out there. In time, eventually, the layers began to peel back. Eventually, our relationship began to grow. Slowly at first, we had mutual friends and we exchanged phone numbers and texted each other, and this continued to grow. I got to know about her life. She got to know about my life. And soon, we found ourselves going and doing things just the two of us. This continued and continued until after a few years, when Amanda was graduating seminary. We started referring to each other as BFFSFL, BFFSFL, which stands for Best Friends from Seminary for Life. I'm wearing a watch today that Amanda gave me at my ordination that has those letters engraved on the back of it. It was actually at my ordination that Amanda shared a reflection about this early evolution of our friendship. In this reflection that Heidi may remember, Amanda said that her impression of me at first was that I talk too much, something I still struggle with. However, despite this, the two of us eventually found a balance between sharing and listening, talking and holding space. It was a balance that allowed us to grow into closer proximity with one another, allowing us to see the true essence of who we were. We found that not only were there many things that we held in common, but there were also many ways that we could give and offer support to one another. Even today, we still talk regularly and give and offer support to one another, even if I still talk too much. This morning, I dedicate the lighting of our chalice to the complex layers of human reality, the complex layers of human relationships, and the deepening relationships that are possible when we remain engaged with one another and work to peel back the layers of our identity. Please join me as we kindle the flame of our chalice and recite the words of our chalice affirmation in unison as found in our order of service. As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness, because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Good morning, everyone. Last Sunday, I took us through a little love experiment, if y'all remember. I brought my friend, Egg, who represented a person, and showed y'all how love from a community can help lift a person out of, let's say, a funk. But today, I have no cups, I have no salt, and I have no eggs, unfortunately. But the egg is at home feeling loved as we speak. Today, we just have our beautiful selves, and we're going to use ourselves. How does that sound? Sounds good. Okay, so last week, we talked about reaching out, talking to others. We can do that today. And getting to know someone is simpler than it sounds, but it always has to start somewhere. A good place to start, of course, is learning someone's name. That's where I always choose to start. So, I would like us all to take a few moments and find someone that looks familiar, but maybe we don't know their name, plus we have name tags. And just seek someone out and introduce yourself. Make that initial impact. Who are you? And share that with someone. Please rise and go meet someone, or play hard to get. Let them come find you. Hey, Grace. I'm including you because most times people don't come and talk to the musician. Yeah. What's your full name and what's its history? Great. Wait. Carol Ann Davidson. I'm confused. Your last name is your mom's middle name?
My middle name is my mom's middle name.
Oh. Grace Ann Bono?
Bono.
Bono. Grace Ann Bono. I love that. Very good. All right.
So my middle name is my mom's middle name. My first name is her mother's middle name, and I have my father's last name.
Whoa, a real mishmash. That's amazing.
My brother's first name is her father's middle name, and his middle name is my father's first name, and we have our dad's last name.
Do you have a chart in the house?
No,
You should, though. That'd be really fun to connect the dots. All right, everyone. Hopefully we learned some names out there, especially with the assistance of name tags. But that's just the first step. The first step is going up to someone and saying, "Hi, my name is, what's your name?" And that can be easy. And then sometimes we just leave it there. We just exchange a couple courtesies, and then maybe the name doesn't stick. But today is about making that name stick and further. The name is almost like the tip of the iceberg. You know, you set foot on that snowy shore, it's a little cold, it's a little scary, you might step back on your boat. You might float a little bit. but we're going to commit to staying on the iceberg and maybe going a little deeper. Some meaningful questions that can help this process of forming an actual meaningful connection is learning where someone's from, their origins. So again, we're getting our exercise today. Go to someone and try to find out where they're from and really imprint it in your head. Doesn't have to be the same person, and I encourage you to find a different person this time. Please. And you can let them find you. Everybody paired up? That's everybody knows where I'm from. That's not a hard question. Hello, everyone. If you could focus back on me. You're not done? Well, then maybe you should go out for coffee sometime. If everyone could focus back in on me. I heard so many good conversations. I'm getting a lot of good residual energy from that. We're past the tip of the iceberg, clearly. So these meaningful connections, I mean, how do we keep these going? How does what we just experienced live a little longer? Well, that happens by reaching out. If you heard someone, talking about where they're from, and some guy just cut you off and just stop talking, everybody, and they didn't get to finish their thought, well, they're going to be here after service. Invite them out to coffee. Send them an email. Pigeon. Any form of communication that you prefer, all it takes is just a simple message, a simple reaching out experience. So these meaningful connections, I mean, it's good to be known by somebody, and honestly, it's not as hard as people think, but it can be a little anxious. It can be hard to step on and stay on that cold ground. So I encourage you, please take the opportunity, especially within a safe community full of friends, take that opportunity to reach out. There are tons of things to do on the island, and there's a wealth of experience in this room. And take it further out in your daily lives. Try to just suss out meaningful connections and see if you can help each other grow. Yeah, thank you all.
Let's take another breath together. Breathing in and out as we settle into this moment again. As you continue to breathe in and out, allow yourself to relax, your mind to come into the center of your being, to arrive fully in this moment, fully together. Feel the connections that we share, the connections that have existed before this morning, and the connections we are building right now together. Breathing in and out as I offer these words of reflection. Spirit of life, as we come together this day, I believe that each of us carries within us a longing to be in relationship and share connection with something larger than ourselves. I believe that we carry with us a desire to peel back those layers of identity and begin to reveal our true nature to ourselves and to one another, to see and be seen. As we breathe in this moment, may we feel safe to let our guard down and answer the call of these longings and desires. May we let the pretense and perfectionism that we hide behind slip away so that we may be known, that we may know one another in deeper and more authentic ways, that we might give and offer support to each other. Let us sit together now in a moment of silence, breathing as we continue to open ourselves and feel that connection, to feel the possibility of something greater that we all can contribute to ourselves, to feel that we are part of something larger, part of the whole. May these words, these thoughts inspire us this morning and in all the days ahead. Amen. At the start of our service, I named all of the people who make this service possible, those who work to set up and to run the tech team and do all of the things. To all of you who make sure that we are finding and creating meaning together. But beyond this, our community, our faith community, it requires something more. It requires us not only to come together, but to come together and give of our gifts of time and talent, and our financial gifts as well. Your contributions in the many ways that you give them help to nourish the spiritual growth of this community through weekly worship and ongoing programming that cultivates connection, belonging, sharing, and caring. If you are someone who is visiting for the very first time, in a moment the offering baskets are going to come through the congregation. Feel free to let the basket pass you by this morning. You are a guest, and we're grateful that you are here. For the rest of you, we depend on your financial contributions to do the work that we do together as a community. May you be inspired to give generously to support the mission of this congregation. Will the ushers now come forward to collect the offering? Generosity and dedicate these gifts, your offerings, to the mission of this congregation.
Sometimes I'm halfway through something and everyone's like, can't hear a thing. And then I have to take a breath and remember it's not about perfection, right? It's such a delight to be with you this morning. I've actually been on sabbatical for a couple months, so I haven't been preaching, and so I feel both excited and also a little rusty. So I hope you forgive any blunders that I will probably fall into at some point during this time together. But it is truly lovely to be here. I wonder, have you ever screwed up so bad that you wondered if you had finally crossed the point of no return? Like messed up so big that you felt for sure this was the time that you would be cast out of the circle of human belonging. Made a mistake and been like, uh-oh, there's no recovering from this. No one? Just me? Okay, there's at least 3 of you. Well, for the rest of you, you can put on your empathy hats today and just imagine what it would be like to make such a mistake. Well, when I was in high school or middle school, I can't exactly remember, I almost burnt down a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, both my parents moved to Canada from the United Kingdom, and my family, the people I thought of as my people, were not always the biological relatives because most of them were across the ocean. It was the circle of friends that my parents had gathered together. Those were the people I thought of as my family. And I grew up with their kids. We grew up together, this kind of motley crew of humans figuring out their way through growing up. And one summer in my teenage years, I happened to go on a trip with some of those wonderful humans that made up my chosen, my created, my fashioned family. And I went without my parents. Now, this wasn't really out of the ordinary, because I had grown up with these people. There was Heather, who really is a second mother to me, Allison and Scott, who filled the role of kind of wacky aunt and uncle, and then a bunch of us teens, Ben and Hannah and a few others. Together we piled into the dust bucket, the affectionate name for the old Toyota van that when you hit the seats, dust plumes just bucketed out of everywhere. You could actually see the road when you looked down We drove the couple hours to the magical place that is called Dinosaur Provincial Park. Now, the joke in the prairies is that if your dog ran away, you could see them run for 3 days. That's how flat it is in Alberta. And that's what it's like when you're driving to Dinosaur. It feels like the prairies are never going to end. Until all of a sudden, you seem to start to descend and drop into the badlands of southern Alberta. The land seems to split open, torn asunder by the movements of geologic time, and you descend into valleys of rocky, sandy hoodoos, these beautiful dune mountains that as a child were a place of wonder. Now, as you can imagine, when the earth splits open like that, you see what has happened in the past. And so, in 1979, in recognition of the over 500 species of dinosaurs that were recovered there, the United Nations designated it as a World Heritage Site. And for us as children, it was a place of wonder. You could spend hours climbing through the rocky ridges, finding caves and passages that snake through the desert terrain. And when you were too hot, you'd jump into the creek that meandered and irrigated this small slice of beauty on the desolate plains. Now, on this trip, alongside the usual crew, Ben, my friend, had invited one of his friends from school, someone I didn't know, someone named, well, let's call him Brian. Now, Brian and I didn't jive. The whole trip, he carried around a lighter that he would flick on and off constantly, each time making a satisfying yet grating noise, snap, click, snap, click, every time. Now, I always had the sense that there was some inner turmoil going on inside of Brian. I mean, let's be honest, though, most teenagers have inner turmoil going on inside, but instead of manifesting in the repression and general vigilant rule following like it did for me, Brian went a different direction. Brian didn't follow rules. Now, I don't mind bending a few rules, but there are a few that I always keep to. Wear a helmet, ask for consent, always delete your browser history, and I don't know, don't light the tinder dry grasses of a world-renowned habitat on fire in the middle of a drought for fun. So here's the scene. It's us teens hanging out beside the creek. We're out of sight of the main campground, and suddenly the click-snap of the lighter goes silent. Odd. I look over. Brian, he's crouched down, his face a mixture of sheer delight and panic. Before him, a fire is slowly spreading, consuming the low grasses near the bank of the creek. Panic. We frantically race over and try to put it out with our shoes. The flames were small enough that left us, well, mostly unsinged, and we got it out. And we told him in no uncertain terms, just cut it out. But we turned around, walked away, and he did it again. And this time, suddenly a section about 1 meter had gone up in flames. Someone's going to need to translate that. 1 meter. How many feet is that? 3 feet. Okay, thank you. Suddenly, a section 3 feet was going up in flames, and the flames were getting larger and larger. Now, there was this moment that is seared like the fire in my memory, when all of us looked at one another and seemed to make an unspoken decision. We weren't going to run back for help. We weren't going to run away, but we were not going to tell anyone about this, and we were going to try to fight this fire by ourselves. Now, 6 teens does not a fire brigade make, but but somehow we improvised. Water from the creek was put into ball caps and tossed in a blaze. Shirts were used to whip out the flames. Shoes were stomped. My memories of this moment, forgive me, are a little bit of a blur. What I can remember of the waves of heat emanating off the fire and the smell of burnt plastic as our shoes melted under the heat. But somehow, after a chaotic 5 or 6 minutes, we did get it out, leaving 2 meters of scorched bank, 6 feet of scorched bank as the only evidence of our misdeeds. It was then that we looked at one another, our eyes meeting again, and we made a second unspoken decision. We looked at each other and came to an understanding that passed between all of us that we were not going to tell anyone about this. The gravity of what had just happened was not lost on me. The crushing weight of the possible ecological and human costs of our actions were seared into me, and so we all scattered in different directions to create the air of deniability. We all wondered if our fast action had meant that our guilt would be the only lasting ramification of our actions. We all filtered back into camp, casually. We were asked about the column of smoke that they had spotted over there along the riverbank, and we didn't know what they were talking about. Yes, even this usually rule-abiding soul went along with it, without really even thinking. Heather, my second mother, I remember her looking at me, her eyes sort of disbelieving our lies. She looked at me and asked directly, "Do you know anything about this?" "No," I lied. "I know nothing." It was when the park ranger pulled up to our campsite a half hour later, and we learned that 2 hikers had witnessed from above our makeshift fire prevention brigade that the ground dropped from under us. It was then that I saw in the eyes of these adults who had known me since I was a child, who had raised me, this deep disappointment. My lies, shattering the trust that I had earned over the years, the image they had of me, the faith they had of me, they look crushed, and I felt crushed. The situation was only lightened by the fact that, and I don't know this for sure, but the park ranger seemed like the type of guy who might have started a few fires when he was a young person. And so we definitely got a lecture. He did spare us any legal action, making us write an essay about the impact of fire on the natural environment, which of course I did when I got home, citing multiple sources. But after the lecture was over, the eyes of the adults still casted their heartbreak my way. And I couldn't bear it. I left our campsite and walked into the dusk, climbing to the top of one of the hoodoos and just laid down. Now, I wouldn't say that I was suicidal in that moment, but I would have gladly accepted the ground just swallowing me whole. Like, why didn't I do more to stop him? Why did I lie? Why did I just go along with it? Why didn't I ask for help? I felt like I had betrayed myself, caught in the grip of fear, the unspoken pressures of conformity, the blinders of my teenage brain, not being able to see a way to recover from the mistake, and so trying to cover it up, which just made it worse. It felt unrecoverable. My worthiness felt sullen. And in many ways, I felt like I didn't deserve to belong anymore. My guilt about my actions crystallizing into the beginnings of shame. Now imagine, and 3 of you have confessed, that I'm not alone in having moments like this. I imagine all of us have had a moment where we've found ourselves doubting if we were worth belonging. when we see we pile up evidence in our own minds about our inadmissibility into the club of worthy because of what we've done. If only they knew what I did, we sometimes say to ourselves, I'd never be welcome again. If only they knew who I really am, they would never like me. They would never let me in. I'd never really belong if I showed them the truth. Maybe for you there is one moment, one action that you might point to, one scar or trauma that is the source of this corrosive story of your unworthiness, or maybe it's the sum total of small moments, each corroding your sense of worthiness, the thing you said when you were tired to a friend, the ball that you dropped when you were tired, when you didn't try your best, when you struggled to kick that habit that you knew is killing you or hurting others. Each of these stories challenges this core conviction of our faith, that each of us has inherent worth and dignity. That that each of us, that all of us are inherently worthy. Inherently worthy of love and belonging. Full stop. No exceptions. No asterisks. No IDs to be verified. No perfect attendance. That no matter what we've done, that if universal salvation is true for all of us, it is true for all parts of us too. Even our pasts, even our presents. But here's the thing about love and belonging, right? Is that you can't belong in the abstract. Belonging isn't theoretical. Love isn't an abstract concept. Belonging is only made real when real people, real flawed people embrace you, invite you into the dance of affirmation and inclusion through real, tangible actions. You can't belong in the abstract, which is to say that we belong each other. If belong is a verb, right? We belong each other, just as we unbelong each other. That is a power that is ours. Kristen Ivy says that no one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone. No one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone. That means you, the person beside you, the person who stopped coming to church because they didn't really trust that they were welcome, the person that truly annoys you, the person that you disagree with every single thing they say, that they too need to be known by someone. Anastasia Basil, writing about parenting teens, reminds us that teens end up in unsafe relationships and dangerous spaces, and they can lose themselves in the wastelands of self-hate and make countless mistakes. A little pause here. I think it's really all of us. And what they need, she continues, is a corner man. Now, in boxing, a corner man is the one person allowed in the ring with the boxer. A corner man tends wounds, wraps hands before the next round, and signals to the ref to stop the pummeling when it gets too bad. But here's the rub. The boxer chooses the corner man. The corner man doesn't choose the boxer. And so Basil writes, when your teen missteps, blows it, vapes, needs a ride home after drinking, meets a stranger online, or just simply falls apart, who do you want them to call to be in their corner? No one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone, and everyone needs to have someone in their corner. Someone that can receive us in those moments in which we feel like we are so unworthy of love, and be there to bind our hands a little bit and say, hey, we got to tap out. The ground beneath me on the hoodoo was cooling. The heat from the day leached slowly into the darkening night. The sun had done its part and turned its attention westward. My tears had come and gone, and I needed a cornerman in that moment. Even as my shame would have revolted at the idea, I needed someone to answer the questions that had been racking their way through my being, the same ones you might pose on your dark nights or gray days, the moments where you feel the fraying of your connection to the fabric of love. Am I still okay? Am I still worthy? Is this the end of the story? Can I be forgiven? But for us to truly trust our cornermen, like really trust them to know our limits and pull us out of the fight in the right moment, to tell us when to quit or when to push through, it takes time, it takes investment for their love and their answers to those questions to penetrate in here. We need to trust that relationship, and that trust is built like the layers of sedimentary rock over time. Time of having been known, having been seen, putting up with someone who talks too much. For the answers to penetrate, to get in here, we need to practice love. Love not in theory, but a fleshy love, an incarnate love that is incarnated in the loving gaze of a friend, the steady hand of a mentor, and the quiet words of counsel, or simply the presence of another bending down beside you to help you muck out. And to get there, it takes time. It takes those small, incremental moves of friendship and conviction. It takes showing up for each other, not because it's convenient or because we want to, but because it is very central to our very survival. It takes a willingness to dive into the wreck, to the messiness of life's detritus, and find in there a future composting away. It takes making it personal. No longer content with polite distance or shallow small talk, but instead it requires a personal conviction to get close in with one another so that you might be trusted sometime, but not now, maybe not even soon, to be invited into the ring, tape in hand, ready to face what's coming together. And of course, there will be disappointment and shame and guilt and struggle and disaster inevitably that will arrive on the shores of our lives. But we all need to be known by someone, and we all need someone in our corner, and the only way to make that possible is when someone makes it personal. I mean, you know someone in your life who made it personal for you, right? Right, that teacher who learned your name and knew your passions, the mentor at work or in the community who saw you struggling and showed up for you, a friend who knew where you came from and what was going on in your life and showed up with a meal, a hug, a listening ear over and over and over again, and you thought you were too much, and yet they still kept on coming. Maybe it was a minister or a church member who saw the spark of potential in you and asked you to risk doing something new. We all have known these people who have made it personal to get close in, to risk investing in you. What did they do? Well, first they remembered your name. It's such a small thing, and yet it's so powerful. I've been staying with Zachary, and it's been lovely to see the way that the kids on his block, they play together, and he knows all of their names. And you can see it makes a difference when one of them jumps up from the ditch and he says, "Hey, Patrick, it's good to see you." They remembered your name. They learned about your interests and passions. They stuck around to hear what formed you into the person that you've become. They loved you with all of your faults and screw-ups. You know this thing when you're talking to a loved one and they talk about this thing they don't like about themselves or the thing that they're struggling with, and like you love them even more because of it? It's that sort of love. Or maybe they saw that potential in you that you couldn't believe was true, and yet they supported you to step into it. Now, I sometimes feel awkward in social situations, But it is true that you can't say to someone, "Hi, my name is Sean, and I want to be in your corner." You can't force relationships, but you can invite them. You can't make it happen, but you can invest in it. And in their book, It's Personal, Kristen Ivy, Virginia Ward, and Reggie Joyner share 5 questions that form the milestones of a journey of connection. I actually keep a card in my wallet with these questions so that I can remember myself. And if you look at the back of your order of service, those questions are there too. The first we've already spoken about. Do you remember my name? When you remember someone's name, you communicate to them that they have value, that they're worth remembering. Do you know what matters to me? Well, when you know someone's passions and their interests, that communicates a friendship that they're worth liking. When you know the answer to the question, do you know where I'm from? Not only just where they grew up, but where they are from mentally, emotionally, even digitally, knowing their everyday context and what is forming them. Well, when you know that, that communicates understanding. And that means that they are worth knowing. Do you know what I've done? This is the question at the crux of that moment for me on the hoodoo. When we've known each other into those places in which we can share one to another those things that we have done, those missteps, those moments of shame, and when someone can hold that answer and truly know what we have done and can turn to us and offer us grace and forgiveness, well, that communicates to us that we are worth forgiving. And finally, do you know what I can do? Well, this is the question that when we truly get to know someone, we start to see something within them that they can't even see themselves. It's usually this spark of potential. You know how those friends can see something in you that you don't even know is true? Well, when we know the answer to that question and we believe in their potential, we communicate to someone, not only are you worth helping, but you're worth investing in. And if you think about it, if someone demonstrated to you that you were worth remembering, worth liking, worth knowing, worth forgiving, worth helping, how transformative has that or would that be for you? And think about how every person in this room, every person you encounter in your life needs that same thing. No one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone. The ground was growing cold on the hoodoo as the night deepened. The cloudless night revealed the cosmos above me, helping me settle something within me. I was so small in this dance of nebulas, the slow rotation of constellations, the light of which took centuries to arrive. I felt this piercing sense of my cosmic smallness, and in this sense, or in this moment, it was a beautiful thing, right? I mean, eventually the entire earth will be consumed by the sun. So it couldn't have been too terrible to pregame just a small part of it. Maybe it was my cosmic insignificance or the time away to regulate my nervous system, or just that it was getting cold in that desert night. Or maybe the fear of navigating down the hoodoo without a flashlight. Whatever it was spurred me to rise and descend down, making my way back to camp, reticent but resigned. I found everyone, the adults and teens, ironically around a campfire. I slipped in without a word, not wanting to make eye contact right away. Soaking up the warmth of the fire, it took me a moment to realize that it wasn't just the fire that was embracing me. Sitting down, Heather, the same person whose eyes had crucified me hours earlier, turned towards me and handed me a marshmallow. Her eyes still containing splashes of disappointment, but now they contained something else too. And forgive me if I struggle to articulate it, but it was this sense of knowingness, like she was saying, I know you. I know what you've done, but more importantly, who you are truly. I've seen you grow. I've been there. You're going to have to clean up this mess. It's going to take a bit of time. But I still love you. My tears, freed again, hidden slightly in the flickers of the fire. They were not tears of fear anymore, but of a love-sick grief. No one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone. And so here is my challenge for each of you. As we enter this new school year, as we enter this new season, where we turn towards those grayer months, I want you to think of someone in your life. It could be a neighbor, a fellow church member, a coworker, a fellow pickleball enthusiast. Is that a thing here? Yeah. My mother is really into pickleball right now, so she's very excited that I'm here. Think of someone who might need someone in their corner. I want you to think about them right now. Who might be that person? And I want you to make a commitment to showing up for them. A commitment to make it personal. A commitment that knows it's going to take a while, and it might not even happen that you might be that corner person, but you're willing to put in the work so that at least that option is there. No one needs to be known by everyone, but everyone needs to be known by someone, and it's up to us to make it personal. Amen, and blessed be. I'm going to invite us to close our time together. It won't be a surprise to people in my congregation that I generally preach longer than some people are ready for, and so we are a little bit over time, but that's actually not my rustiness, that's just who I am. But without further ado, why don't we sing to close our time together? So invite you to rise in body, spirit, putting on those masks to sing number 126, Come Thou Fount of Air.
Every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent. Feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of aspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in unison, help our hands tell of our love with
risen, as we prepare to extinguish the flame of our chalice, I invite you to repeat the words of our extinguishing after me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Before I have Grace play our postlude of the morning, I'd like to just invite you all, after the benediction that Reverend Sean gives, to take a moment before putting the chairs away, to maybe turn to those questions that are in the back of our order of service, or pick up a conversation that you started in our time for all ages, and just check in with people. Start building relationships. Start standing in each other's corner right now, today. I now invite Grace to play our postlude, Skyboat Song, a traditional Irish folk song. Oh, it's Scottish.
The Unitarian Albert Schweitzer is oft quoted in saying, "At times our own lights go out and is rekindled by the spark of another person." Each of us, he continues, has great cause to think with deep reverence for those who have lighted the flame within us. As we go from this place honoring those who have lit that flame with us, may our commitment be one to another to be a force of rekindling in the best sense of that word. Go in love, in peace, and in joy. Amen, and blessed be.